I'm Michael Sean Harris, and you're listening to Mike's Moment of, a weekly podcast in which I, along with my guests, share our various interests in moments of inspiration, truth, life, technology, culture, and more. I hope you're entertained and informed, and that you feel inspired to join me again and again in my moments of. All right. So, welcome to this episode of Mike's Moment of. What is this? A moment of vulnerability? All right. My special guest is Conroy Wilson. He's the executive director of Ashe and the resident swag boss on Digicel Rising Stars, among other things. He wears many hats. Anyway, Conroy.
Yes.
How you do?
Good.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, man.
All right, so we're going to talk about one particular thing today. You'll come on again and talk about other things, but today we're going to talk about this concept of vulnerable moments. Now, I hear you use that term a lot because I've been in board meetings with you and other kinds of meetings, and you know you use it with your employees, use it with people you're counseling, use it with yourself, which is important as well. So yeah, just tell me what is that? What is a vulnerable moment?
So the concept of vulnerable moment came about because in working with young people, in working with Ashe, in talking with people, you find out there are some conversations, there are some topics that you need to have, but they're sensitive. They can offend the persons, and it requires a certain level of courage to probably say some of the things that you need to say. So this concept of vulnerable moments is an opportunity to allow the person on the receiving end of the communication be prepared that what you're about to say is difficult for you to say.
So you're preparing them for the booth.
You're preparing them. You're preparing them for the moment in which you are being vulnerable.
Okay.
And you're asking them to be conscious that this is a vulnerable moment for you. And the intention of it is not so much to boof them, as you have said,
right,
but the intention is to be able to communicate powerfully and honestly and openly in a way that may seem to them as offensive. But if you've already been set up that, this is a vulnerable moment, right, so don't judge me for how it comes out in a way, kind of get behind that and go to what the intention is. So it prepares the person to be able to hear this conversation, and it also helps the person who is delivering the conversation to be a little bit more confident in being forthright, because we find ourselves hiding behind these nice mushy ways of saying things, and sometimes we really don't say what is just on our hearts to say. So once you say to somebody vulnerable moment, they are now prepared that, hey, something is going to come, right, that I kind of have to brace myself for.
Right. But you're also telling that this is potentially an uncomfortable situation for me to be able to have to address this situation with you.
Yes.
So that's really where the vulnerable
it sets up a safe space.
Okay.
It sets up a safe space for both persons to be able to share what's going on, because in the aspect of you doing your vulnerable moment, you also give the other person an opportunity to be vulnerable and to hear it, because sometimes it could be things that they don't necessarily want to hear or hear in that way.
But doesn't that also kind of make you feel exposed? I mean, when you're setting up this vulnerable moment, because a lot of people in many situations, they'll have certain masks and certain attitudes that they have really to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make yourself that vulnerable, I mean, won't you have to be in a situation where you actually know this person really well, or do you set up these vulnerable moments with people you've just met for the first time?
Well, the truth is that, I mean, I've done it in several instances. I've done it with people who don't know me, because for me, it creates a wonderful avenue for me to be able to speak frankly. And that is so important, especially in some lines of business. It came out of me personally. I hate being in a setting where we're talking around the issues and we're skirting and, we kind of, one of my former mentors would say pussyfooting around all these different topics and subjects, as opposed to just saying, this is what it is, and dealing with that from a space. So it was for me to be able to say, hey guys, I know I can be blunt. I know I can come across in a particular way. So I'm setting up this moment to be vulnerable with you. And I'm asking you to allow yourself to be vulnerable with me as well.
Well, that's like a nice technique, because I know that I can be quite sarcastic, and I've done it in meetings, so maybe I can prepare them better when I set up a vulnerable moment. But all right, so you've been frank, you've set up this vulnerable moment, and you've said what you need to say, and what's the next step? What if they don't take it well? Even if you set up this moment, and even if they do take it well, what happens after that?
Well, the vulnerable moment is also requesting permission from the person to be in it. So if you've given me permission to be vulnerable, then you have no choice but to accept. If you are, whatever you do with it is going to be upon you.
Okay.
So the vulnerable moment is saying, when I say vulnerable moment, I'm waiting for an acknowledgement. Okay, yes, I'm allowing it to be vulnerable. Okay. So the person can also say, no, I'm not allowing it to be vulnerable. And I say, okay, fine, let's move forward. Then we can have that conversation. But vulnerable moment is also a request saying to you, I would like to be vulnerable with you. Can you allow me to be?
Okay. So have there been situations where the reaction has been really bad?
Yes, there have been situations where people have been offended by the things said, even in the vulnerable moment, because some of the things are maybe true or maybe harsh to hear. But what has not happened, and what it does is it takes away their ability to respond negatively in the moment, because you gave me permission.
Okay.
Yeah, if you gave me permission, you can't now stop and tell me no, because I explained to you that I'm requesting your permission to be vulnerable. So you now have to deal with it. And the fact is, this we say you throw one stone at the pig pen, one will squeal and them get licked.
Yes.
In the same way, if I say something to you that you're offended by, that is vulnerable for me, there is some truth in it. So go look for the truth and deal with it in some kind of way, And it's a harsh thing to hear, but it's good for growth, it's good for learning, it's good for some of those situations where we just cover up.
But is there a way back from that if somebody isn't let's say emotionally mature enough to accept what you have said, or to even if they don't accept it in the moment, you could go home and process it, and after a day or two you come back and go, okay, yes,
yeah,
I really thought about it, what you said was really true, and I need to work on blah blah blah. Is there a way back from that if that person is not in that place in their development, let's say?
Well, the truth is that you have responsibility for you. I don't have responsibility for anybody else but myself. So a vulnerable moment is also allowing me to be true to me in a particular moment, right? And whereas the person on the receiving end also has a responsibility to themselves, how they want to respond, how they're going to deal with it. I cannot stay in my world and be responsible for what you do, or for what you say, or for what you think. I can support you. I can say to you, you can say to me after my vulnerable moment, boy, that was, really strong. That was really, it affected me in a particular way. And I can say, yeah, I can understand how it could, but as being very authentic in that moment, that's what I felt. Right. That's how I felt. That's what came out. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to feel this way for the rest of my life, but I'm telling you in this moment, because sometimes we bottle up the emotions, we bottle up the feelings, and that causes us to get sick, that causes us to get flu, confusion, anger, all kind of different stuff. So you have to find a way to let it out. You have to find a way to be authentic. You have to find a way to be honest, and then move forward from that.
All right, so it's one thing to say vulnerable moment, and it's another thing to mean it. Because what if now this person you've had your vulnerable moment with goes, oh yeah, vulnerable moment and they put their hand up and it's really just a matter of trying to get back at you for what you said.
And that's fine. Remember, what you give out, you're supposed to be in a position to also receive. Mm-hmm. So me saying vulnerable moment with you also gives you an opportunity to say vulnerable moment with me. But you know what the good thing is? At least we're having a conversation. Them say if you squeeze an orange juice come out. So anything that comes out means that it was in there all the time to come out and you have not just found a way to allow that to come forth so you can deal with what the real issues are and move forward as opposed to pretending like it's not there.
Okay. So what situations would you advise using setting up these kind of vulnerable moments, and are there any situations you would say maybe not?
Well, so these vulnerable moments I've used in interpersonal conversation with friends, I've used in relationships for topics that are hard to talk about, I've used in business, when you want to be able to, like I've used it with management teams, when you want to be able to share, some thoughts about, how people respond and how you perceive people's actions and our behaviors. I'm trying to think of, I've actually used in a big group meeting with partners, and created the concept of vulnerable moments because we were talking around different issues and not really, getting directly to what was really going on in the room. Like you talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Yeah, the vulnerable moment helps you to get to the elephant in the room. So I don't know if I could say there is a situation where where you couldn't say you shouldn't use vulnerable moment. What I will say though is that vulnerable moments is not an excuse to be mean.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Very, very clear. It's not an excuse to be mean. It's not an excuse to deliberately just try to put down somebody or be, it's a means of sharing authentically. In that moment or in that particular situation, this is what came up for me.
Right.
Or this is what my thinking is. So it's not a means for me to tell you, all manner of things that, out of my own fear or insecurities or whatever. But it's a means for me to say, honestly, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. When you do this, maybe it lands in this way. Or I think that this is why you do this, or this is why you say that, or this is how we could do this better, or this is what you're not doing, or this is what I'm not saying, or this is, it's those kind of opportunities. Now, that may land for you as offensive because whatever it is, or it may just land for you as, oh, I didn't know that that's what you were thinking, or I don't understand why you're thinking that. But it's a moment for you to just be authentic. And authentic doesn't necessarily mean because you have to also be conscious that, as you've said, whatever you do as a vulnerable moment, you have to be careful that you're also going to get back that vulnerable moment.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can think of a few situations where I can actually start using the vulnerable moments, and I just put in bold, not meant to be mean, because I'd have to remember that. So I'm gonna ask the listeners, to maybe give some comments and stuff as well. So guys, give your comments and if you have tried out this technique with the vulnerable moment with your with your friend or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your kids, and then let us know how it worked out for you. Hopefully well. Yeah. All right. All right, Conroy. Thanks again.
Yeah, man.
We'll hear from you again soon.
All right, cool.
All right.